Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Aquarium series. Today I'm just going to go through the entire assortment of bottles and things I have bought, my experience with each, the gimmicks. So I'll start from your left to your right. So here I've got baking soda. Now what is baking soda used for? I use reverse osmosis deionized water, okay, to top off the tank and when I do water changes. So what that's going to do is put back pure water. If you use tap water, you're probably not going to need this because your tap water is going to already have medium to high levels of DKH. That is your carbonate hardness or alkalinity, if you'd like to call it. For a 75 gallon tank, you can look up a calculator. It takes about 8 grams of this to raise 1 DKH. I recommend doing half of that at a time every 24 hours. I try to keep my KH in that South American tank at about 3. With the reverse osmosis water, it goes down to 2 all the time. Now what is the alkalinity good for? Plants do use it. Now this is easy to overdo. In a reef tank, you're going to want this on much higher levels. In an African cichlid tank, you're going to want your alkalinity in much higher levels. But for a general planted tank, South American tank, you're going to want it low. So what also is for the nitrifying bacteria in your canister filter, it uses your carbonate for filtration purposes to transfer for the ammonia process and that, so on and so forth. So you do need this if you're just using reverse osmosis water for sure. What do we have here? Ickaway. I have found it'll say it doesn't kill your shrimp, it doesn't kill this, and it doesn't kill that. If you have snails and you use Ickaway, it's got malachite green in it, it's got copper in it. Okay, I just had an ick. Talk about ick for a minute. I just had an ick epidemic not too long ago. I personally have found a natural remedy. This is the last course of action. You could use a separate tank, a quarantine tank if you wanted to. This just, so what I did, I raised the temperature to 81, 82 degrees. I have a 13 watt UV light in my canister filter. I put it on 24 hours a day to try to kill any protozoa, to help the fish's immune system. And then I started feeding the fish their food with a little bit of garlic infused in the food to help their appetite. Ick is always in the aquarium at all times that I know of. The fish, it's like your body's always fighting off germs and bacteria every day. So are those fish. Ick is one of the things that can affect them if they're stressed out or they have a low immune system. So I found that the natural cure is the best cure, personally. I have tried this and it just decimated my snail population and I have few survive. So if you have shrimp, snails, crabs, or anything that's not a fish, if you use Ickaway, I suggest a quarantine tank and separate all the fish. And it really can be treated in about 7 to 10 days. So next we're going to go to equilibrium. So as I mentioned before, I use reverse osmosis water. So the plants cannot grow without using equilibrium because what it is, you're stripping the water to its bare essentials. So it doesn't have any calcium, magnesium. So I'm going to read what it has in it. Potash, calcium, magnesium, manganese, a little iron, and That's pretty much it. Now, what I do recommend if you use reverse osmosis while using this is doing about half of what it recommends on the back, which is 16 grams for every 20 US gallons. I aim for a DGH, a general hardness of about 4 to 6. It's 5 in the tank right now. So if you want to grow healthy plants and you're using reverse osmosis water, you do need to use this to remineralize the water, and it's in the right percentages of what you need for a planted tank. Highly recommended. This API CO2 booster I have had no luck with. It's definitely not a CO2 booster. What it is, it's like Excel in the fact that it is an algicide. But I have found not using the Excel tends to let blackbeard algae creep up into the tank, even at small amounts. I personally use half of what it calls for. So in a 70 gallon, I use a little less than half. I use 3 milliliters. I think it calls for 1 milliliter per 10 gallons. I found that a daily dosing of about a half amount helps keep the blackbeard algae away. CO2, it's a gimmick. It's a this is an algicide. It's a cleaner. They use it in hospitals and so on and so forth for disinfecting hospitals in stronger amounts. They sell it as a CO2 booster because then it's regulated differently if you label it differently, but it is not a CO2 booster. I've noticed that the API doesn't really affect the blackbeard algae for whatever reason. They seem to be the same chemical. I only still have it as a backup. The Excel, for me personally, in my experience, does do a little bit better. Now, does it help your plants grow? Possibly, because it's killing algae on a microscopic level so that that light film that you can't see on the leaf is getting more direct contact with the nutrients in the water column and the light, because it has killed the algae. Now, you can easily overdose this, so I recommend definitely not overdosing what they recommend on the back. These are macro and micros from a company called Nylock G. Now, before I was using a lot of the Flourish products. And they're fine. I used Flourish nitrogen, potassium, so on and so forth. I switched to these and I have had luck with these. They're already in a percentage list of the macros: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Your nitrogen's 3%, 0.8% phosphorus, potassium 10%. So that's really what you want. You want very little phosphorus or nitrogen, because to be honest, it's being produced by your fish waste through your filter. So in reality, you shouldn't even really need any nitrogen or phosphorus, but this is a little boost. I'll post a printed out nutrient regimen that I have. This is the micros. It's got magnesium, boron, zinc, iron, magnesium, cobalt, copper, molybdenum, and nickel. So this is all your micros. I dose these at a little more than a half amount once a week. So then what do we have left here? I've got Flourish potassium and Flourish iron. So when I don't dose these, I wait a couple of days, and then nothing in that tank produces potassium. It definitely has to be added. Just like this has to be added to your reverse osmosis water, unless this will be found in tap water, your magnesium and sulfur. So I add this another time a week at full dose, and I also add the iron without the rest of the micros. Now, some people will say that adding iron creates a algae bloom. I have had that, but I'll talk a little bit about algae. In my experience, to keep the algae down to a minimum are really key two things. Your photo period of your light set to 8 hours. Keep the blue down. You want your blue light down. And filtration, filtration, and filtration. So people will say, well, you're dosing too much and that's why you have algae. I could probably get away with dosing this every other day, 3 times a week, like it says on the bottle, which I think is a gimmick to make you buy more product. And I still wouldn't have an algae bloom because algae needs light. And it competes with the plants, and the filtration and the low photo period of 8 hours, I think, is key to the algae. So I do add iron, and I do not experience algal blooms because of adding iron. And I believe it really helps the plants. This is Instant Amazon Blackwater Conditioner. I bought this years and years ago. It's, from my personal experience, it's fish oil. I can't tell whether it does anything beneficial or anything negative. It's supposed to add tannins to the water. You can do that on a whole bunch of different positive ways with peat. Algae Fix. Now this is different than the Excel. It's also an algicide. In my personal experience, now this helps fight the black beard algae. This, in my experience, helps fight more of your green slime algae. On the weekly maintenance, I put this in there about once a week. I wouldn't recommend doing it any more than 3 times a week if you're trying to get algae under control. And for basic maintenance, I just do once a week just to keep it, just for the heck of it. I also have algae eaters, and I haven't found this to affect the snails or anything else. And then we'll do feeding. So I keep the temperature right now at 80 degrees because I'm trying to have them spawn, and I have been having them spawn. So when I have the temperature up at 80 or 81, I feed twice a day. So I'll start with bug bites in the morning, and then I'll alternate bloodworms, and then the next day I'll do pellets, and I'll keep that up. Now, when I lower the temperature down to 74, 76 degrees, or 73 degrees, I'll switch to once a day because the fish's metabolism is, of course, lower than usual. So if you have any questions about each product, try to let me know. This is just a brief review of each thing that I use, and I hope you had some kind of insight on each product, and I hope that helped. So thanks for watching.